Mega bag alert, 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 folks. That's right. I know it's been a while, but we're back, baby. Back like we never left. And what better way to come back with a mega bag alert, trades, everything in between. Man, we got so much to talk about. I have my phone on driving mode. I don't know what's going to happen between now and the end of this episode, but who cares? Okay, so let's just get into everything because I know there's more stuff that's going to be happening within the next few hours. Okay, so Terry McLaurin, Trey Hendrickson, James Cook, Taylor Moton, and Tyson Bagnet all get paid. Jacoby Myers requests a trade. Trades, that's right, trades, because we had a lot of trades in the last few days. We even had a trade happen right before I was about to hit the record button. Literally, as soon as I was getting ready to record, now all of a sudden the Panthers and the Vikings finally decide to trade Adam Thielen. All right, we have to talk about that, as well as Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback for the Colts. Who failed who? That's the question I think we all need to be asking, folks. And my thoughts on the Browns quarterback situation. All right, all of this and more on the 90th episode of the Football Junkies podcast. All right, I am your host with the most. That's right, 90 episodes. 90 episodes. 90 episodes. That is a milestone, folks. We are 10 episodes away from 100 episodes, all right? And man, oh man, does it feel good, all right? All of this and more on the 90th episode. I know that feels real. I know I did it again. I really don't care. I'm so excited for you guys, all right? I am your host with the most, all right? I'm your chief bagrodamus. That's right, chief, head of the table. Anything and everything related to the bag, rumors to the bag, conspiracies to the bag, and more, okay? But guess what? I am all these things and more. But most importantly, the most important thing that you must remember is I am your host, Kale. That's right. The same Kale that is your chief bagrodamus, that is your chief head of the table, that is everything and more when it comes to being a GM. I know it's been a while, but guess what? On three, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's just get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the league right now. So, before we get into all the great stuff that we have to talk about, we have to talk about these bag alerts, all right? So, Terry McLaurin, wide receiver for the Commanders, inks a 3-year, $96 million deal. Let's put a pause on that. And I say that because initially we didn't get all the information that we have now about his contract. So let's just get into it. So this comes from Ian Rappaport. So he has $44 million fully guaranteed, converting to $50 million in April of 2027. Since his $19.1 million this year wasn't guaranteed, he gets a $30 million signing bonus, and he has incentives that is based on yards, catches, touchdowns, Pro Bowls, and playoffs. All right. So technically speaking, he's making $29 million a year. He's not actually making 30, but he's making 29. He gets to 30 based off of certain incentives that he meets, essentially. Now, when we look at his stats from this past season, 117 targets for 82 receptions, 1,096 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns, 13.4 receiving yards per reception. Here's a few junkie nuggets, okay? So, according to Underground NFL, Terry McLaurin is one of 4 players in 2020 to have the most 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Other players include Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, and Justin Jefferson. When Jaden Daniels targeted Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels had a 134 passer rating, 12 touchdowns, 1 pick, and averaged 9.1 yards per attempt. When Jaden Daniels targeted everyone else, Jaden Daniels had a 91.6 rating, 13 touchdowns, 8 picks, and 7 yards per attempt. Now, since 2020, of 633 targets, Terry McLaurin has had 17 drops, which is a 2.7 drop rate. D-Hop, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jacoby Myers have lower drop rates among wide receivers with 350 plus targets in the last 5 years. Now, wide receivers with 75 plus targets last season that produced a better EPA per target than Terry McLaurin: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. Now, according to reception perception, all right, when facing man coverage, Terry McLaurin has a 74.4 success rate. When facing zone coverage, Terry McLaurin has a 75.9 success rate. When facing press coverage, Terry McLaurin has a 75% success rate. A really good deal for a really good player, but I will say this. Sometimes it takes both sides to cave in with their demands in order to get a deal done. And I think for Terry McLaurin, I think he realized, listen, this team isn't going to give me 30. They're probably going to give me 30 with incentives, but they're not going to give me 30 straight. And so he probably came to the realization that, hey, I might as well just want to sign. There's nowhere else that's going to give me a better deal than what the Commanders are giving me right now. And so when we look at this, he does get extra money. Yes, it's a short-term deal. And it's a deal where by the time the deal ends, he's going to be sort of like at the tail end of his career possibly. And that's when you're going to have to start paying Jaden Daniels and all of your other younger players. So I'm not mad at this move, but it's like, damn, it sucks because it's like Terry McLaurin plays such a pivotal role in this team and this organization for the longest time. And you would have thought the Commanders would have been like, you know what? For you being so loyal to the team, for you being so just outgoing with the team and just being a positive image for this team when Dan Snyder was the dark cloud over this team, you would have thought that they would say, you know what, we'll give you 31, maybe 32. Or better yet, we'll give you 33. No. They had their feet dug in the sand and they said, you know what, we are going to give you 28, 29 million at best. And I think they probably say, you know what, based off of your age and all these varying things, we're just going to give you this. And that's the dirty business when it comes to negotiating contracts, folks, especially for professional athletes, is that a lot of times you're really going to know how they really feel about you when they start talking about money. When they start talking about money, the gloves are off. That's when they start bringing up all the really minor things. You coming in late at this time. You doing this. You doing that. You missing this workout or whatever. That's when all those things comes out. And so here we are. But I'm glad that this got resolved. And I'm just glad that this is just not being talked about anymore. All right. And let's keep this thing going. All right. So Trey Hendrickson, pass rusher for the Bengals, basically has a restructure of his deal. Okay. It's a $14 million raise, meaning he'll make $30 million this year and then become a free agent next year. So essentially, it's a 1 year, $30 million bump up. Now, according to Field Yates, for cap purposes, the deal includes a void year. Trey Hendrickson's cap number increased by $3 million this year. The deal doesn't include a no tag clause, meaning the Bengals do have the right to tag him after this season. And if the Bengals were to franchise tag Trey Hendrickson in 2026, his tag will be worth $34.8 million. Now, when we look at his stats from this past season, he had 46 tackles, 17.5 sacks, and 92 quarterback pressures. Now, according to the 33rd team, he was tied with Myles Garrett for the most pressures in the league with 83. And he also accounted for a league-leading 49% of the Bengals' sacks last season. Myles Garrett and Trayvon Walker were the only other players who contributed 30% of their team's sacks in 2024. So according to Diana Rossini from The Athletic, the Bengals offered Trey Hendrickson a 3-year, $95 million deal, but the second year wasn't guaranteed. Now, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN also reported this as well, but he added this. The deal included $33 million in guarantees, but no guarantee money past the 2025 season. So both of them were correct in their reporting. But if you're Trey Hendrickson, this should have been the first thing that you should have asked for. Forget about asking for a long-term deal. You know this team isn't going anywhere. So I don't understand why in the world it took for them this long to find some resolution. I would have just asked for a 1-year deal where you just bump up my pay a little bit, not a whole bunch, but just a little bit. I'll be fine. And then I'll just hit free agency and I'll get a bigger bag. But this is what I said a couple episodes ago, though. Trey Hendrickson, regardless if he was going to get traded or stayed with the Bengals, he was going to sign a 1-year deal because he realized, listen, we're at an impasse. They're not going to give me what I want, and I'm not going to give them what they want. So guess what? We're just going to sign this 1-year deal. We're going to act like we're just one big happy family, and then after this season, we gone. Now let's keep this thing going, all right? So Taylor Morton, right tackle for the Panthers, inks a 2-year, $44 million extension, $40 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $22 million a year. When we look at his stats from this past season, he allowed 1 penalty, 1 sack, 2 hits, and 14 total pressures. Now, according to the 33rd team, outside of Taylor Moton, the only right tackle with a lower pressure than him was Lane Johnson. That's a really good class to be in. Folks, this is a really good deal for a really good right tackle. A really productive right tackle. As I've said before, you got to take care of your tackles. If you don't take care of your tackles, guess what? Your quarterback is going to be lunch meat for the pass rushers. And it's only right that you take care of this veteran right tackle that's been fairly solid his entire year with the Panthers. And let's keep this thing going. So James Cook, running back for the Bills, inks a 4-year, $46 million deal. He gets a $9 million signing bonus, $15.2 million guaranteed at signing, $28.2 million in total guarantees, and he'll be making $11.5 million a year. This is the most guaranteed money for a running back in the last 5 years, according to Adam Schefter. Now, when we look at his stats from this past season, 207 attempts for 1,009 rushing yards, 4.9 rushing yards per carry, 16 rushing touchdowns, and 21 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. Now, here are the stats when he was rushing within the tackles. 110 attempts for 542 rushing yards, 4.9 rushing yards per carry, 10 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. Now, the stats when he's rushing outside the tackles is 97 attempts for 467 rushing yards, 4.8 rushing yards per carry, 7 rushing touchdowns, and 11 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. I'm glad they got the deal done, but I'm just going to be honest here. I feel like this was a reach. When you look at the highest paid running backs in the league, what is the one thing that they all have in common? Consistency. Throughout their entire career, they have had a level of consistency that says, hey, I am the best of the best in my position. When you look at Kyren Williams, the last 2 years, 12 rushing touchdowns, 14 rushing touchdowns. We look at Josh Jacobs in 2019, 7 rushing touchdowns. In 2020, 12. In 2021, 9 rushing touchdowns. 2022, 12 rushing touchdowns. 2023, 6 rushing touchdowns. 2024, 15 rushing touchdowns. When you look at Jonathan Taylor, 11 rushing touchdowns in 2020, 18 in 2021, 4 rushing touchdowns in 2022, 7 rushing touchdowns in 2023, and 11 rushing touchdowns in 2024. Okay, let's keep this thing going. Derrick Henry, for instance, all right? 13 rushing touchdowns in 2022, 12 rushing touchdowns in 2023, and 16 rushing touchdowns in 2024. There is a level of consistency with the top running backs, whereas in James Cook's hand, not so much. This last season was his best season by far. And you guys paid him like he's a really consistent running back. He's not. I'm just going to be completely honest here. Happy for him that he got his money. Always happy for players getting their money. But let's just call a spade a spade. This wasn't overpay. At best, if it was me personally, I'm only paying you between $8 to maybe $9 million a year. And that's only because I like you. That's not because of your productivity. Because I realize that, listen, and this is no disrespect to him. This is no disrespect to any player at all. I can find another James Cook in the draft, okay? Because with all these other running backs, guess what? You can put them in any system and they're going to thrive. Whereas with James Cook, you can essentially say that, hey, because he's in this system, because he's behind this offensive line, because he has this type of quarterback, he's seen this success. Now, I know it probably makes me sound like a hater, but I'm not. I'm just calling it a spade a spade. If this was any other position, if this was a wide receiver, tight end, pass rusher, corner, middle linebacker, whomever, I would have the same smoke. Because again, when you get these type of deals, there is a level of expectancy when it comes to your play. And the minute that you don't show that, guess what? The team is going to start finding a way to get out of that contract. We see it every single year. We see it with the Jaguars. The Jaguars will sign 5 and 6, 7, maybe 8 people to these really big contracts. And then guess what? That next year, they're getting rid of all of those guys. They're either trading them away, cutting them, releasing them, whatever they need to do. I'm just going to be honest here. James Cook is not a top 10 running back in my mind. Top 15, maybe top 20. Okay, fine. I'll put you there. But to pay him like he's a top 10 running back in the league, I'm not doing that. To be a top 10 running back in my mind, there needs to be a level of consistency over 3+ years. If over 3+ years you've been consistent, Okay, fine. I'll give you credit where credit is due. But I'm not just about to anoint you a top 10 running back just because you have one good season. Anybody could have one good season. How many one good seasons have we seen every single year? Especially when it comes to free agency. Everybody will overpay for one good season, thinking that they're going to get that one good season over 3 or 4 years, and then guess what happens? You don't even see a lick of it. And now you're stuck with somebody that's making well over the money that they should be getting. But I'm going to get off my soapbox, okay? So let's just keep on going, all right? So Tyson Bagnet, backup quarterback for the Chicago Bears, inks a 2-year, $10 million deal with a max value of $16 million. He'll be making $5 million a year. I'm not going to read to you his stats because honestly, it's really not worth it. The best way to sum this up is this is just a backup insurance policy just in case Caleb Williams doesn't pan out. It's not something that's earth shattering, that's going to break the bank, that, it's going to, leave you confused or puzzled. No, this is just a backup plan just in case Caleb Williams is going through a slump. Now let's talk about Jakobi Meyers, okay? So Jakobi Meyers has requested a trade. So, according to Ian Rappaport, he's been trying to negotiate a new contract but has been unsuccessful to this point. Now, according to Tom Pelissero, he is due $10.7 million in the last year of his deal. Now, when we look at his stats from this past season, 129 targets for 87 receptions, 1,027 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, and 11.8 receiving yards per reception. His spot rack market value is 2 years, $60 million, which is $30 million a year. Now, here's the stats when he's an outside receiver, okay? 86 targets for 60 receptions, 744 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, 12.4 receiving yards per reception. When he's lined up in the slot, however, 40 targets for 25 receptions, 286 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and 11.4 receiving yards per reception. So either way you look at it, he is just as productive as an outside receiver as he is as a slot receiver. Now, me personally, do I think Jakobi Meyers is going to get traded? No. Because for one, he's the most reliable weapon to Geno Smith right now. Granted, I understand that they drafted Jack Bech and Dante Thornton Jr., but none of them had the same production as a Jakobi Meyers who's proven. Now, I will say this. If you're the Raiders, how much money are you willing to give Jakobi Meyers? And if you're Jakobi Meyers, what's your number? Because me personally, if you give him, 20, maybe 25 million more, I don't think nobody's really complaining personally. But at the same time, if you're the Raiders, would you rather trade him away, maybe get another pick, and you could possibly get another receiver next year? I don't know. All I know is he's not getting traded. Now let's get into these trades because there's a lot of trades, all right? So let's start off with Kansas City trading away Sky Moore to the 49ers. So Kansas City receives a 2027 6th round pick, and the 49ers receive Sky Moore, of course, and a 2027 7th round pick. Really good move for a very depleted wide receiver room who, quite frankly, they just needed somebody. And so getting Sky Moore for this, that's not bad at all. Not to mention, Sky Moore's production on the Chiefs has dwindled year after year after year. Now, I don't have any sources or anything, but one could speculate that there was probably a point in either last season or the season before that where he had just fallen out of the good graces of the offense. And that happens sometimes. Even when you look at his stats, in the last 3 years, he's only had 1 touchdown. And even when you look at the 2024 season, he only was targeted 3 times. And he didn't get no receptions, no touchdowns, no nothing. The first 2 years were his most productive years. I don't think this is an earth-shattering type of trade, but I do think this provides the 49ers some wide receiver depth because Demarcus Robinson is going to be suspended for 3 games. Brandon Ayuk isn't going to be on the field for a while. You don't know what's going on with Juwan Jennings. And all you have is just Ricky Pearsall, and I know I'm forgetting somebody else. So, not bad. Now let's keep this thing going. So, Denver and the Saints made a trade. So, Denver receives a 2026 4th round pick and a 2027 7th round pick. And New Orleans receives wide receiver Deval Vele. I think when you look at this deal, this is a really good deal for both sides, and here's why. For one, the Saints receive a big body receiver who's like 6'5", if I'm not mistaken. And the Broncos receive a 4th-round pick for next year and a 7th-round pick for the 2027 draft. I think that's good compensation, folks. Not to mention, when you look at his stats from this past season, 55 targets for 41 receptions, 475 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, and average 11.6 receiving yards per reception. Not bad at all, honestly. Let's keep this thing going. So Harrison Phillips heads to the Jets. So the Vikings receive a 2026 6th-round pick and a 2027 6th-round pick. And the Jets receive, of course, Harrison Phillips and a 2027 7th-round pick. All right. Really productive interior defensive lineman. Really good run stuffer. My guess is that the Jets weren't satisfied with their interior defensive line room, so they decided to add another veteran to pair with Quentin Williams, which is not bad at all, honestly. So the Browns traded away Jawan Briggs, defensive tackle. So in return, the Browns receive a 2025 6th-round pick, and the Jets receive Jawan Briggs, of course, and a 2026 7th-round pick. Again, they're trying to bolster up their interior defensive line, which isn't bad at all. My guess is he's probably just a depth piece. I don't think he's going to be, a week 1 starter or anything, but, I can definitely be wrong. The Jaguars traded for Kalen Saunders, defensive tackle, and then the Saints received Luke Fortner, center. My guess is they probably needed a backup center, and so, they probably reached out to the Jaguars and, they made it happen. But when we look at Kalen Saunders, he's actually been a really productive defensive lineman within the last few years. This past season, he had, 2 sacks? And then his last year with Kansas City, he had 3.5 sacks. Like, an underrated type of defensive lineman that probably doesn't get as much, attention like, like the bigger names, but still productive. Let's keep this thing going. So Philly and Houston make a trade. So the Philadelphia Eagles receive John Mechie in a 2026 6th-round pick, while Houston receives Harrison Bryant, tight end, in a 2026 5th-round pick. Really hasn't been the most productive in the last few years. Sure, his last year with the Browns, he had 3 touchdowns, but his time with the Raiders, 12 targets, 9 receptions for 86 receiving yards, and averaged 9.6 receiving yards per reception. But I will say this, with the Eagles getting John Mechie, I think that was actually really good of an upgrade. I would say so. I think pairing him with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, that's great. You're talking about somebody that's a really good route runner, that is speedy, shifty, and at this point, really didn't have a chance to make the roster with Houston. They have Tank Dell, they drafted 2 receivers, they traded for Christian Kirk. Like, that receiver room is crowded. Sometimes it's just best to just, give them another opportunity. So, good for him. But let's keep this thing going, all right? So, the 49ers and Washington made a trade. So, the 49ers receive Brian Robinson, running back, while Washington receives a 2026 6th-round pick. So, Brian Robinson, which I'm actually surprised at his stats, believe it or not, he had 187 attempts for 799 rushing yards, 4.3 rushing yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, and 19 rushes of 10-plus yards more. A really productive, bruising running back, which the 49ers have been looking for a very long time. Pairing him with Christian McCaffrey, I think that's great. Not to mention, he takes some of the snaps away from Christian McCaffrey, which keeps Christian McCaffrey a lot more healthier as the season progresses, which is, what you really want. Not to mention, having a bruiser, that means he can get you those needed yards, those 2 or 3 extra yards, or he can wear down on the defense, to the clock, various different things. Really good move for both teams. Eagles receive Sam Howell from the Vikings. So the Vikings receive a 2026 5th-round pick and a 2027 7th-round pick, while Philly receives, of course, Sam Howell and a 2026 6th-round pick. A really good backup quarterback. Do I think he's the best of the best? No. But I think based off of what they have in the backup quarterback room for the Eagles, I would say he's probably the best that they have right now. Outside of Tanner McKee, who, if I'm not mistaken, he messed up his finger, so that's probably why they made this move. And then not to mention, the Vikings signed Carson Wentz after this move was processed and announced and whatnot. But let's keep this thing going. So Kansas City made a trade for Ep.90, one of their defensive tackles that they had a few years ago. So Kansas City receives him in a 2027 6th and 7th conditional picks, while the Jets receive a 2027 6th and 7th conditional picks. So basically, they're just swapping conditional picks. That's all they're doing. Really good run stuffing defensive tackle. Nothing more to say, honestly. The Philly again, folks. They love their offensive and their defensive linemen. They're always going to make a trade. They're always going to make a move for offensive and defensive linemen. So the Philadelphia Eagles acquired Fred Johnson, left tackle, while giving up a 2026 7th round pick to the Jaguars. So according to the stats by PFF, okay, he allowed 4 penalties, 8 sacks, 5 hits, and 37 total pressures. Now, when you look at his placement, he's had 351 snaps at left tackle, 119 snaps at right tackle, and believe it or not, he had 10 snaps at tight end. This guy is a weapon. This guy is a weapon. That's all I'll say. But the Eagles, again, made another move for offensive lineman. So they traded for Darian Kennard, guard for the Packers. And so they give up a 2027 6th round pick, all right? So looking at PFF, he allowed only 3 total pressures and 1 sack. I know recently the Eagles just cut Kenyon Green, who they traded for, I think it was this offseason. Yeah, I think they traded for Kenyon Green this offseason because that's how they were able to ship away C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And they just cut him a few days ago, so I guess it only makes sense for them to go after Darian Kennard. Now, here's the thing, though. So, according to PFF, he's had 68 snaps at right tackle and 3 snaps at left guard. Maybe he's a backup for right tackle and guard, I guess. I don't know. A little bit of a head scratcher, but we all know that they're going to turn water into wine when it comes to this stuff, all right? So, Kenny Pickett is on the move again. You might as well want to call him Ryan Fitzpatrick 2.0, all right? No disrespect to you, my G. So Cleveland receives a 2026 5th round pick. We all know that Las Vegas was looking for a backup quarterback. I would have thought they probably would have went with, I don't know, Josh Dobbs or somebody else, not Kenny Pickett, who really didn't play in any of the preseason games. Just saying, a little bit weird. But let's keep this thing going, all right? So the Vikings and the Colts made a trade. So the Colts received Mekhi Blackmon, corner, and the Vikings receive a 2026 6th round pick in return. We just have a few more just like smaller trades, nothing really big or whatever. So the Browns traded for KT Leveston, guard, and the Rams receive a 2028 7th round pick. My guess is Def Piece. Seahawks trade away Michael Jarrell, right tackle, to the Falcons, and so they receive a 2027 7th round pick, which my guess is they probably made this move because they probably caught wind that, yeah, Caleb McGarry is going to be done for the year. So, really great move at the right time because, man, oh man, you do not want to have a glaring hole on that offensive line, all right? So, the Cowboys made a move with the Saints. So, the Saints receive Akeem Richards and a 2028 7th round pick, while the Cowboys receive a 2028 6th round pick. The Texans and the Chargers made a trade. So the Chargers receive Austin, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, dog. I'm not going to butcher it. Right tackle, while the Texans receive a 2027 7th round pick in return. My guess is this is offensive line help. Nothing more, nothing serious. The Lions made a trade this morning, actually. So the Lions traded away Tim Patrick to the Jaguars, and so the Lions receive a 2026 6th round pick in return. And then the most notable trade of all trades that happened prior to me hitting the record button, Adam Thielen goes back to the Vikings. The Vikings receive Adam Thielen, a conditional 2026 7th round pick and a 2027 5th round pick, while the Panthers receive a 2026 5th round pick and a 2027 4th round pick. I do have to add this in there as well. The Vikings currently are working on Adam Thielen's contract right now just to rework it. And the Panthers aren't receiving anything back when it comes to dead money or anything like that with his contract. So, really good move for the Vikings because their wide receiver room has been depleted with injuries. And so, adding him and pairing him with Ty Felton and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, man, oh man, do you have a really good receiving core because Adam Thielen is still a really productive receiver. Sure, he's not going to give you 10 or 12 or 13 touchdowns, no, but he can give you between 3 to 6 touchdowns and still be really productive. Like, the route running is still there. He can still go toe-to-toe with a lot of receivers. Now, am I saying he's going to cook them? No. But I think he can definitely be a very contributing piece to this offense because Justin Jefferson is still nursing a hamstring injury. I know there's like a few other receivers that are still banged up as well, so it was only right that they made this move. And then, not to mention, when you look on the Panthers side, I mean, they have Tetero McMillan, Xavier Legette, Jamie Horn Jr., Croker, who they brought in as an undrafted free agent as well. Like, that receiver room is really young, so it's really a good move for both sides because I know leading up to this point they were trying to get something done, and then everyone was saying it looks like the deal has basically fallen through. A trade wasn't going to be done, and then next thing you know, a trade gets done this morning prior to me recording, and so here we are. But those are all the trades that have happened so far for now, because I know there's probably going to be more trades happening within the next 24 to 48 hours. I know, what time is it? 11:47. So the waiver claims are about to start in about maybe 20 to 30 minutes, meaning any of the players that have been waived, they can now be claimed by another team. And so the waiver claim goes like this, all right? So it's based off of the draft. So depending on where your team was is where they're going to put in their waiver claim. It's not like a free-for-all where you just, hey, I want him, or I want him, or I want him. It doesn't work like that. It's structured based off of the draft, okay? So the first team in the waiver wire is going to be the Titans, and the last team is going to be the Eagles. And so, for instance, the Steelers, right? With the Steelers drafting 21st in this past draft, they're going to be 21st on the waiver wire. That's how it goes. But let's talk about something a little controversial, okay? So this may turn into a rant, but I think it's very much needed, okay? So Daniel Jones has been anointed the starting quarterback job for the Colts, all right? But before we get to that, we got some breaking news, folks. That's right. Kyle Hamilton of the Ravens inks a 4-year, $100.4 million deal, $82 million guaranteed. He is now the highest paid safety in the National Football League at $25.1 million a year. This is all happening right now. Usually I would have some stats and everything, but this literally just happened. So, man, this is a great deal for a really productive player. I don't care what anyone says. Kyle Hamilton is the 1A or 1B, whichever way you want to look at it, to Antoine Winfield Jr. Those two are the best safeties in the league right now. And it was only right that the Ravens take care of him because guess what? Like I said before in previous episodes, this is the difference between a proactive and reactive organization. The Ravens once again show why they are the better organization in the league right now because guess what? They were proactive in making sure that they take care of Kyle Hamilton because they know that, listen, if he has a crazy season this year, if he wins, I don't know, Defensive Player of the Year or get another All-Pro nod, that's way more money that they're going to have to give him. So it was only right that you take care of him right now at this point. Now the thing is, what are they going to do with Tyler Linderbaum? What are they going to do with Isaiah Likely? What are they going to do with all the other players that are looking for more money? That's a question that I'm curious about at this point because, man, you're giving out big contracts to a lot of people. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think Lamar is getting ready to come up for another extension as well. So, great for Kyle Hamilton. Great for the Ravens. We also have some more breaking news as well. Kendrick Bourne, former wide receiver for the Patriots, has been released. Okay, after missing most of camp with a foot injury, Kendrick Bourne is now healthy and wanting a fresh start. So let's see what happens, folks. But now that that's all done and whatnot, let's talk about this whole Colts situation. So Shane Steichen has made the decision to make Daniel Jones the starting quarterback for the Colts this year. So this is what Shane Steichen had to say. And he's our starting quarterback for the season. I don't want to have a quick leash on that. I feel confident in his abilities, end quote. He goes on to say this, and I quote, when they both came in, I made it very clear that this is going to be a battle, and they're going to compete for the job. And like I said, I'm going to make the decision I feel is best for the football team, end quote. Now, this is what Daniel Jones has to say after finding out that he earned the role. And I quote, I think that was obviously a big piece of why I came here, to be on the field and to be with this group. I think it's a strong group of players, as I said, and a strong group of coaches and the system. I think there's a lot of things here to be excited about. So yeah, I'm certainly happy I made the decision, end quote. Now this is what Anthony Richardson had to say, and I quote, Steichen made the decision. That's the decision we've got to live with. But no hard feelings, nothing personal. I've just got to keep growing. I just can't let me not being a starter stop me from going and being the person, the player that I'm supposed to be. I feel like I've taken big steps in a lot of ways in my preparation, my knowledge of the offense, and the intensity I put into working on my footwork. So I'm delivering the ball in the right spots and making sure my mind is in the right spot so I can make the best decision for the team. I just feel like I made a lot of growth, but there's still a lot of growth to be made, so I'm just working, end quote. Now this is what DeForest Buckner had to say about the quarterback decision, and I quote, with the big decision with QB1, all the guys, we were all just ready to hear who's going to be number one. Whoever it was going to be, we're going to get behind him no matter what, you know what I'm saying? Whether it was AR or Daniel. Now he goes on to say this as well, and I quote, obviously naming Daniel, we know who's QB1, who we're rolling with into the season, and we're going to get behind him, support him in any way we can. What I've been telling the guys is the best way we can support the quarterback position is everybody around him, defense, offense, special teams. Everybody's got to do their job at a high level, and we can take this thing very far, end quote. DeForest Buckner had this to say about Anthony Richardson, and I quote, this is a time period for him where he can sit back and really develop on his skills at the quarterback position and mastering the offense. He's just one play away from getting back into the ball game, and when that moment comes, he'll be ready. He's a deep competitor inside of him. He wanted the job really bad, and he was doing whatever it took to get to the starting job, and we've all seen the progress from this year, especially in this camp. Like I said before, throughout training camp, one of his best camps that he put together, we've all seen the progress in him, and this decision shouldn't define him and really overshadow all the stuff that he's been able to do, end quote. Now, this is what Quentin Nelson had to say about the state of the quarterback room, and I quote, you look around the league and you just see the consistency of having Patrick Mahomes or a quarterback behind you that's been the franchise player for years and years and years and years. And getting to build that chemistry with that quarterback year after year is something that there is an advantage to when it comes to O-line play, end quote. Now, with this move being made, if I'm not mistaken, this is now the 12th starting quarterback for the Colts since Andrew Luck retired. Here's the stat line in the starts for all of the quarterbacks that have played since Andrew Luck retired. Jacoby Brissett, 2019, he had 15 starts. He had a 7-8 record with 18 touchdowns and 6 picks. Brian Hoyer, 2019, he had 1 start, 7-9 record with 4 touchdowns and 4 picks. Phillip Rivers, 2020, 16 starts, 11-5 record with 24 touchdowns and 11 picks. Carson Wentz, 2021, 17 starts, 9-8 record with 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. Matt Ryan, 2022, 12 starts, a 4-7-1 record with 14 touchdowns, 13 picks. Sam Ehlinger, 2022, 3 starts, no recorded stats at all. Nick Foles, 2022, 2 starts, an 0-2 record with no touchdowns, 4 picks. Anthony Richardson in 2023, 4 starts, 2-2 record with 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Anthony Richardson in 2024, 11 starts, 6-5 record with 8 touchdowns, 12 picks. Gardner Minshew, 2023, 13 starts, 7-6 record with 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. Joe Flacco, 2024, 6 starts, 2-4 record with 12 touchdowns, 7 picks. Here's Daniel Jones's last year with the Giants. 341 attempts for 216 completions, 2,070 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 7 picks, 6.1 yards per attempt. Folks, this move was not made because Daniel Jones lit it up in every single preseason game. This move was not made because Anthony Richardson didn't show anything. This move was not made because of favoritism or anything like that. This move was made to save their jobs. Because Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are on the hot seat right now. This roster is one of the better rosters in the AFC, let alone in the division. You have Jonathan Taylor. You have a really good offensive line. You have Alec Pierce. You just drafted Tyler Warren. And that's just on the offense. On the defense, you have DeForest Buckner, Latu, Travarius Ward that you just got in free agency, Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin. You have a lot of great weapons. And like I've said before in previous episodes, what's been the number one thing that's preventing them from taking things to the next level? Bad and inconsistent quarterback play. And so now they're about to go into another year where most likely they're not going to go anywhere and they're going to underperform. So if you're Colts ownership, You are looking at Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard under a microscope. You are looking at them in a way that says, listen, I need you guys to show me why you guys deserve to stay here. Because right now, both of them have underperformed. And granted, Chris Ballard has built this team. Chris Ballard has weathered the storm since Andrew Luck has retired. But guess what? Time's a ticking, man. Time is a ticking. They're looking for their return of investment with Anthony Richardson. And so far, they haven't seen it. Now, granted, I will say this. Anthony Richardson deserves some blame. Shane Steichen deserves some blame. Chris Ballard deserves some blame. Everybody deserves some blame. But the number one question that we must ask ourselves here, folks, who failed who? Who failed who in this situation? Now, granted, I'll be honest here. From a fan perspective, when Anthony Richardson was coming out of Florida, I was like, wow. He has a lot of intangibles. He could run, got a killer of an arm, really athletic, can extend the plays. He can do it all. But then once I did a little bit of digging, I did some research. Oh, he don't have a whole lot of starts. Oh, he hasn't played a whole lot of time in college. Oh, no, this ain't going to work. This is not going to work at all. And now you see it. Mind you, Anthony Richardson has not helped his case at all since being drafted. Because you know why? You can't go and you can't say on another podcast that playing in the NFL is easier than college football. Better yet, I'm going to pull up the quote and I'm going to tell you exactly what he said word for word. And I quote, playing in the NFL, I feel like it's easier than college. For real, in college, you got players like they good and they know they good, but they're not as confident. They got to rely on other players to do this for them to do that. He also goes on to say this. In the league, everybody trying to work to stay in the league, trying to keep their job. That just lets me know I ain't got to do too much. I'm going to do my job and he got to do his job. It's going to work, end quote. That right there was strike one. Strike 2/3 was you tapping out. When you tapped out of that game, that sealed your fate with the team. Because every little bit of confidence that anybody had, whether it be front office personnel, whether it be scouts, whether it be players, whether it be coaches, whomever, they lost all of it the minute that you tapped out. And the fact that you used such a really shitty, and I mean shitty excuse on why you tapped out made you lose everybody in that locker room. Because guess what? Those offensive linemen that are protecting you, they don't have a chance to take a break. You know when they take a break? When they're off on the field. All 4 downs, they're on that field. Tired, hurt, body feeling like crap, they're there. And the fact that you tapped out, you lost everybody in that room, brother. Let me just read to you his starts. In total, he had 24 career starts in college. 24. Now let's compare that to some notable quarterbacks within the last, maybe 15, 20 years, okay? Jaden Daniels, 55. Peyton Manning, 45. Lamar Jackson, 38. Eli Manning, 43. Tom Brady, 29. Ben Roethlisberger, 38. Jalen Hurts, 56. Baker Mayfield, 48. Out of all of those people that I just read, Tom Brady was the only one who had the least amount of starts out of everybody. In case in point, that's why he was drafted where he was drafted. In case in point, that's why it took him so long to hit the field. Because why? He had Drew Bledsoe ahead of him, and he wasn't going to hit the field anytime soon. So what he had to do, he had to sit. He had to wait. He had to be developed. He had to go through different things. So explain to me how the coach decided, you know what? We're going to draft somebody because they have a bigger arm, they're athletic, they're strong, and they're big. And they resemble people like a Cam Newton, a Ben Roethlisberger, their body quarterbacks that were able to move during their heyday. We like that. That's like you going to one of those crappy little car dealerships that's on the side of the road, maybe by a McDonald's or a gas station or somewhere. They probably got those same cars that's been in that parking lot for about 5 or 10 years, and you see one of your favorite cars that's in there, and you stop and you go and you check out that car. And the little car salesman come out, probably got some ketchup on the side of his shirt, you know what I mean? Probably just finished smoking a cigarette and drinking a hot Coca-Cola. And he says, how can I help you? And you say, you know what, I want that car. And he tells you, hey, that car got a lot of miles and it's going to need a lot of work. You say, you know what, scratch it, don't care, still want it. And you get that car knowing all the things that are coming with it. That's exactly what the Colts did with Anthony Richardson. You knew that by drafting Anthony Richardson with the 4th pick in the draft, you are inheriting a project. Now, here's the thing that I think we need to talk about, okay? Because I want to go a few different ways. I'm like that guy off of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that one meme where he got his hand on the wall and there's a whole bunch of connecting points and whatnot. That's where we are with this situation, the Brown situation, okay? So think about this for a second here, folks. A project is something where it is not completely finished and it needs time to be worked on, okay? Have you ever drove through a neighborhood, a newer neighborhood to be specific, and there's maybe about 2 or 3 houses and they're not really done yet. They're still, in the working phases, they still have the skeleton of the house. They haven't put up the drywall or any furniture or, hardwood floor if they're going to do that, or a fireplace or anything. They just have the foundational stuff up. That is called a project. Anthony Richardson was a project. And yet, the Colts said, you know what? We still are going to draft him. Knowing that most likely he's going to have to sit for at least 2 years just for him to have at least a legitimate chance to possibly show something. And instead of you allowing him to sit, you thrusted him to the starting quarterback role, knowing that he is a project, knowing that he doesn't have a lot of experience playing football. And in doing so, the first year, he doesn't play as many games, he gets hurt. Okay, shut him down for the season. Okay, cool. Then next year, he's not really playing his best. So what you do, you put in Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco isn't playing his best. So what you do, you put Anthony Richardson back in. And then you have the whole conundrum with the tapping out and, the rest is history. And so here we are. Everyone has a hand in blame with this entire situation. Because you know what's going to happen now? Most likely, the Colts are going to draft a quarterback next year. And I haven't talked about the quarterback draft prospects. I haven't even talked about the draft yet. But this is just a little bit of a taste. I can assure you there will be at least 7 to 8 teams that are going to be looking at a quarterback next year. And the Colts will probably be one of them that's going to be drafting quarterback fairly high. Because I don't expect this team to go anywhere. Especially with someone like a Daniel Jones at center. So explain to me why we've gotten to this point. Explain to me why you feel like Daniel Jones is the best option available. And granted, I understand that first preseason game, Anthony Richardson messed up his pinky. It was a really nasty injury. If I were you, I would not look it up. I get all of that. But you would have at least wanted to give Anthony Richardson a chance. Just so he can still put out something. Rather than give it to Daniel Jones. Now, granted, we should have seen the tea leaves prior to this point when they gave the type of money that they gave to Daniel Jones. You're not going to give a backup quarterback $14 million. No. You're going to give a quarterback $14 million if you believe in your whole heart that he is going to be the starting quarterback week 1. Name me one backup quarterback that's making $14 million. I'll wait. Can't find any? Exactly what I thought. So if you're the Colts, if you're ownership, if you're the scouting department, if you're anybody in that front office, you are crossing your fingers, You are crossing your pinky toes. You are crossing everything that you can possibly cross and hope that Daniel Jones show a little bit of something. If he doesn't, they're going to clean house quickly. Shane Steichen will be gone. Chris Ballard will be gone. Everybody else will be gone. Because again, this team is ready to be competitive. This team should be competing with the Texans, or at least beating the Texans to win the division every single year. I just listed to you some of the notable players that are on this team. And you mean to tell me this team underperforms every single year for the past 3 years? I'm sorry. There's no excuses with that. And granted, I understand why the Colts brought in Shane Steichen, because they were thinking, okay, if he can refine Jalen Hurts, maybe he could do the same thing with someone like an Anthony Richardson. You want to know the difference? Jalen Hurts played 56 games in college. He had experience with Alabama and then with Oklahoma. So he had well enough experience. He was very much comfortable with the game of football. You can't say the same thing with Anthony Richardson. And so now here we are. Now, if you're Anthony Richardson, most likely they're going to let go of you next year. Now, me personally, I will look at the Rams. I will look at the Vikings. I will look at places where I know I'm going to be refined as a quarterback. Sean McVay, Sean Payton, Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan. Those are the people that you need to be going to. Andy Reid. You should not be going to anybody that has no experience in developing a quarterback. And I mean truly developing a quarterback. Kevin O'Connell, he's done it. He has a track record. Sean McVay, he has a track record. And now me personally, if it's my personal opinion, I'm going to Sean McVay first. Because I've seen what he's done with Baker Mayfield and what he did with Sam Darnold. Actually, no, that was Kyle Shanahan. Forget about that, okay? The fact of the matter is this. This was not a performance-based decision. This was, I'm trying to save our jobs for another year decision. And I'll just leave it there. Now, the last topic we need to talk about, the most controversial topic that we need to talk about, and that is the Browns, okay? This may be another rant as well. So yesterday, Kevin Stefanski decided to make the decision on who's going to be the backup for Joe Flacco, and it's going to be Dylan Gabriel. Now, I've seen a lot of clips. I've seen a lot of podcasts. I've seen a lot of interviews. Seen a lot of different forms of content about Shedeur Sanders and the backup quarterback role and just this entire quarterback conundrum that the Browns have been in. And I think the evaluation between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders is more personal than professional. We don't see a whole lot of people that are dissecting the plays between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Instead, what we see a lot is grown men who are basically picking apart every single mistake that Shedeur Sanders does, both on and off the field. I remember vividly when word got out that Shedeur Sanders got a speeding ticket. The next day, everyone's saying, oh, that's somebody that you don't want on the team. That's not a good move. That's not a good idea. Blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be doing that. Let me tell you something. Imagine you 25, 26 years old. You got a really fast car. Think of your favorite fast car. Me personally, it's probably a Dodge Viper. Love Dodge Vipers. And imagine you're on the highway. It's maybe about 12, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's in sight. Nobody's to your left. Nobody's to your right. You got a clear road for as long as you can see. You're not going to want to test that bad boy? You're not going to want to push it to the limit just a little bit? That defeats the purpose of having a fast car. You ask any person that has had a fast car, they will all say the same thing. I have at least tested it once. But you have so many people, including the GM, who was very critical of Shedeur doing this. When in actuality, all the GM just need to say, we are handling this internally, everything is fine. And then you just tell Shedeur, hey, listen, man, when you go on this road at this time of night, make sure you be careful, man, because the cops be everywhere and you don't really want all that, all right? Now, if this is a repeated pattern, then you need to have a more intense conversation with Shedeur. But I didn't see nobody saying anything about Myles Garrett when he got his upteenth speeding ticket. I didn't see anybody saying that. So if you're going to hold people responsibly, then you need to be transparent, regardless if they are a rookie or the face of the franchise. Everyone must be held accountable. But clearly, that's not the case. And we also need to talk about Dylan Gabriel saying the things that he said, which we all know was directed at who? Shedeur Sanders. You cannot say, and I quote, yeah, it's just part of it. You know, there's entertainers and there's competitors. And I totally understand that. But my job is to compete. And that's what I'm focused on doing, end quote. You cannot say something like that without receiving major backlash from it. Nobody said anything about you being an entertainer or a competitor. Nobody said anything. So why are you bringing this up? I understand that some people prefer one quarterback over the other. But in actuality, what we need to do is just observe who put out the best tape. Who performed the best in this situation. And in my mind, I would say it's a tie. Shedeur Sanders had one good game. Dylan Gabriel had one good half. That's it. It's a tie. You can't really do a real analysis anymore when it comes to quarterbacks because the preseason is so short now. It's only 3 games. 3 games really isn't enough to really make a true decision on who's going to be the backup quarterback. Let me just read to you the stat lines for all 3 of these games, okay? So, Shedeur's stat line against the Panthers, 23 attempts for 14 completions, 138 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel's stat line against the Eagles, 18 attempts for 13 completions, 143 passing yards, 1 pick, 7.9 yards per attempt. This is the stat line with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur when they face the Rams. Dylan Gabriel, 19 attempts for 12 completions, 129 passing yards, 6.8 yards per attempt, and 1 touchdown. Shedeur Sanders, 6 attempts for 3 completions, 14 passing yards, and 2.3 yards per attempt. Now, here's the thing. By the time Shedeur Sanders got into the game, the offensive line was atrocious. The same weapons that Joe Flacco and Dylan Gabriel had wasn't there anymore. So in some ways, one could assume that the Browns put Shedeur Sanders into battle with a butter knife and a half-broken twig and said, you know what? Fight your way out of this. And yes, he did take some unnecessary sacks. Yes, he needs to start throwing the ball away. This is my little saying that I came up with. Throw the ball away, live another day. If you throw the ball away, no one cares. Believe it or not, a lot of quarterback coaches, offensive coordinators, and even coaches would rather for their quarterback to just throw it out of bounds than to try to make the big play and then risk possibly having a fumble, an interception, pick six, whatever. Now, I will say this. Shedeur Sanders did take a sack that was unnecessary, and then it pushed the team way back, I think, maybe 30 yards if I'm not mistaken. So yes, Shedeur didn't play his best ball. But at the same time, we also have to realize that, listen, if you're going to have a true quarterback competition, then you needed to keep at least 2 or 3 starting offensive linemen on the field, 2 or 3 weapons on the field. Because guess what? As soon as that game was over, 24 to 48 hours later, a lot of those offensive linemen, if not all those offensive linemen, were cut. Those receivers, tight ends, and running backs were cut as well. So there was no point in putting Shedeur in my mind. Then you have to talk about Shedeur not being put in for the 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is what separates average quarterbacks to elite quarterbacks. We have seen games where Peyton Manning isn't playing his best ball. But when the 2-minute warning is over, laser focused. Executing every single play, touchdowns, converting third downs into first downs, you name it, he's doing it all. We've seen all the greats do it, and that's what makes them great. So I don't understand why the Browns are doing this, but it's leaving a lot of people just scratching their head trying to figure out what in the hell are the Browns doing. But at the same time, how many quarterbacks have the Browns gone through in the last, 15, 20 years? Not surprised. So, do I think Shedeur Sanders is going to play at some point in this season? Yes. I do think at some point, probably close to maybe the last 2 or 3 games of the season, when they probably realize, hey, we're not going anywhere, we're not going to the playoffs, we're eliminated, blah, 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 yada, yada, all that other good stuff. They'll probably push Shedeur in for maybe about a game or two. And they may do the same thing for Dylan Gabriel as well. Because I don't think Joe Flacco is holding up for 17 weeks. I just don't personally, but that's just my personal opinion. But I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys like what you were listening, please, 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 please make sure you guys leave a 5-star, 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 5-star review on anywhere and everywhere that you listen to podcasts, okay? We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you could think of, all right? Now, if you go on rss.com/football junkies, there's a few other platforms that we're available on that you can listen to, okay? Now, for my YouTube people, make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, turn that notification bell on, leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts about anything that I have covered this episode, okay? This is a very jam-packed episode, and I know we got a few more to go. Wait a minute, we got college football this weekend, folks. Oh, man, we got Texas and Ohio State. Oh, man, I know. We're going to have to talk about that. We are going to have to talk about some of these games, all right? Just stay tuned for that. But for my YouTube people, when you go on our YouTube page, Football Junkies Pod, all right? Football Junkies Pod, there is a link tree. When you click on that link tree, it will take you to anywhere and everywhere that we have Football Junkies content, all right? Now, for my TikTok people, Football Junkies Pod, all right? Football Junkies Pod. Guys, I appreciate you guys so much for blowing up this clip that I just posted a few days ago about left tackles and why having an elite left tackle is important. I appreciate all the support that you guys have shown me up until this point. We are 90 episodes in, folks. 90 episodes in. Only 10 episodes away from hitting 100 episodes, man. Isn't that great? Isn't that an amazing feeling? I know it is for me personally. But for our Instagram people, all right, Football_Junkies Pod, all right, Football_Junkies Pod. Junkies Pod is not what? It is together, not spaced, okay? It is together, not spaced. Football_Junkies Pod, all right? Now, for my X people /Twitter, GM Kale, all right? GM Kale, Kaile. And for my Blue Sky people, GM Kale, GMKILE. As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Stay tuned. We will be having more clips as well as episodes, coming out fairly soon, probably within the next few days or so, because I still some of these college football games and give my analysis on that. We still have to talk about the draft and, my predictions and my observations based off of what I've read and heard and my own analysis of certain positional groups and everything. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. And remember, the regular season starts next week. So you already know we're going back to, previewing certain games and talking about the games and everything else and more, right? So as always, this is your GM Kill signing out. Peace and love. Later, guys.